You're both well known for your research in lawyer wellbeing in your home countries. Perhaps start with you, Nathalie. What does your research tell us about lawyers and wellbeing?
I think that yes, we measure the prevalence of different health issues, but we know that before to start this research that we will have a very high prevalence. But what we learn, we have a better understanding of the health determinant. And I think it's the importance of this research because we develop many new tools and measurement skills to have a better assessment of risk and protective factors among lawyers and notaries and paralegals and articling students, because we included every legal professionals in Canada in this research. And particularly what we learn, it's, for example, that all the factors are from three main sources. The first is the social sphere. In the social sphere, we have the violence and incivility, but also the stressors related to the regulation of the profession. I have to update my skills. I can fear to live some professional litigation or to be subject to practice review, for example. And we also have some stressors from the organizational sphere, and sometimes it's related to the practice setting, or sometimes is related to my area of practice, if I'm more exposed to emotional demand or less, or if I'm a larger firm or a smaller. And finally, we measured some stressors from the individual sphere, and particularly we developed some skills related to some competency that lawyer may have to protect themselves in their practice, and not because it's an individual responsibility, but because we have to give some tools for young practitioners to better protect themselves. And among these skills, we measured some the impact of psychological detachment, assertiveness, and also different individual characteristics. Some, for example, if you are a younger lawyer or older lawyer, but also if you are a member of LGBTQ2S+ community, the stigmatization you can leave, and yes, so we have a better and multidimensional understanding now.
Very broad-ranging research. Thank you. So Emma, tell us a bit about what your research tells us about lawyers and wellbeing.
So the largest scale research that I've been involved in recent years has been firstly the International Bar Association's global report on lawyer wellbeing, and secondly working with a charity, Law Care, in the UK, looking at the legal profession specifically within the UK. And for both of those, it perhaps came up with the kind of statistics that you would recognise in Australia, in Canada, around, for example, over a third of the respondents to the IBA survey talking about the fact that their work impacted negatively or very negatively upon them. One thing that came out of both surveys was that workload was a huge issue, and the kind of pressure that put upon individuals. That was, in the UK survey, that was one of the biggest predictors of burnout amongst lawyers. Another thing that came out on the UK survey was around the importance of autonomy. Those lawyers who felt they had autonomy, that they had some control over, say, their workload, their career, how they could approach things, they were better insulated from burnout. The other interesting thing, I think, was around self-care. So we hear a lot around lawyers and issues with, say, substance abuse and alcohol abuse. But actually, many of the respondents in both these big surveys had really good self-care practices in place. It certainly wasn't an individual issue. It was about that kind of cultural system level piece that we need to address. And that ties into what Nathalie said, because we also, both these surveys also indicated that there were certain groups that had lower levels of well-being, and that was women, those with a disability, those who came from minoritised ethnic backgrounds. And that is, of course, isn't about those people as individuals, it is about the kind of system and the culture that we have. So I think that gives us some ideas on how we need to tackle the issues as well.
So Australia's a long way from Canada and from England. What is relevant about the international research and practice, do you think, for us in Australia? Perhaps starting with you, Emma.
I think one of the things that's been particularly interesting about being involved in the International Bar Association survey was that it covered 124 jurisdictions in total. That was the range of respondents. And actually it showed that there are lots of commonalities between jurisdictions. It isn't limited to one or two jurisdictions. It led to the IBA describing it as a global crisis in lawyer wellbeing. So there are definite commonalities there. That isn't to say that everything is the same. Of course, within jurisdictions, the legal profession can be very stratified, let alone between jurisdictions. But what I think it does mean is that it's really vital that we all learn from each other. I think there's a danger of reinventing the wheel sometimes in each jurisdiction and everybody starting from scratch. And actually, if we're talking about that bigger cultural systemic piece and that spans jurisdictions, then we really need to have that international collaboration and discussion to be able to share good practice and to be able to evaluate what is working and how we can take that forward in future.
And Nathalie, what do you think might be applicable for us here in Australia?
I think that the recommendation after this research report, some of these recommendations are particularly relevant at large. I think for it's relevant for all of lawyers around the world. The first one is related to the importance of better structure the mandatory training hours. In many province or territory in Canada and around the world, we don't have the same practice related to the mandatory training hours. Sometimes we have less hours, sometimes more, sometimes it's more structured and sometimes not. I think that we have to better structure and have an evolving vision of the training needs of professionals. When you are younger professionals, you don't have the same needs that when you progress in your career, because you will be a manager, for example, and it will arise some new needs related to this. We have also to include in these mandatory training hours some hours related to some contemporary themes, for example, related to diversity, stigmatization, related to wellness. So this is the first one. And I think the second recommendation is related to the importance to have a better understanding related to the stigmatization. Because for sure we have a lot of stigma related to wellness, and the main issue related to this stigma is it's because it's implied that professionals will wait for reaching for help and will wait too long. And we measure in this project at first the individual perception about stigma. And we asked many questions to professionals related. What do you think that people with mental health issue in your profession? Is it okay to make their profession? And we asked the same question after to the same professional about what do you think that people in your profession think about it? And the gap is more than 40%. It's a huge gap between individual and perceived stigma. So, and this gap is fueled by a lack of communication. And when we ask people if they live some stress and don't reach for help, even if they need it, we saw that a large a large percentage of them don't reach for help, more than 45%, I think so. And among the reasons, we identify some reasons more related that I don't have time to reach for help, because it needs time, yes, to be well. But also we have many reasons related to the perception of workplace, fear the impact on their career, and sometimes I just think that it will pass. But for many of them, they don't have the energy to be committed. So for them, it's too late now. So I think that it's very important to increase the awareness for a regulator, that the importance to reach for help.
Thank you.